Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Fantasy Football University, FFU. I'm Mr. Bill DeCouslis. I am here with Mr. Tom Lang, coming to you yet again in the offseason, but we're getting close to the regular season.
Oh,
Mr.
we are
Lang,
in draft season.
we are in draft season. Yes, we are. Mr. Lang, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing good today. How you doing, Billy?
I'm doing all right. I am so excited for today. We've got a great show for everybody today. We are talking draft strategy, draft math, tips to help you in your draft, things you might not have realized from a mathematical sense, from a strategic sense. But first, we'll get into the news. But Tommy, do you have any opening thoughts you'd like to share today?
Yeah, no, again, we truly appreciate the opportunity to bring these videos to you every single week, and we truly appreciate everybody that takes the time to, you know, watch our videos, share, reacts to our videos, whether it's on whatever platform it is. So again, share, subscribe, ring that bell. You'll get notified when we get drop more videos.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Lang, I believe it was last night, and we have some interesting news today, which I'm sure we'll get to. But last
Yeah.
night, I think you blew up my phone with like eight different news notifications. So, if you'd like to address a few of them today,
Yeah, I forgot how many I sent you.
yeah,
Um,
it was
but
quite a
yeah, I
few.
mean, well, I will say, so one of the biggest news that really came out was that the NFL, so NFL Network, so ESPN acquires NFL Network Red Zone rights and fantasy products from the NFL. So that means I assume from that perspective right there, and I'll have to look a little bit more detailed into it, but the fantasy products, meaning NFL Fantasy, is now owned by ESPN, which is probably really good because NFL Fantasy is not really good. So, um, ESPN, we believe that Sleeper is the best application to really do fantasy football on because you can do so much with it. And it's a little bit more of a user-friendly system especially for newbies, like, getting into it, learning it. But then ESPN and then there's other platforms, but uh, NFL is not really the best. Kind of like Yahoo. ADPs are not so great on those things, which is great for people that don't draft by ADP. And that's what we're going to be bringing you today. The other things that like I kind of sent Billy were just,
Yeah, before we get into that, can I just to quickly comment on
yeah,
the ESPN thing? Because I saw some commentary on that this morning. So. From a fantasy perspective, this doesn't really affect anything. It's still the NFL. It's still, we're still going to be, players playing and competing against each other. However, I mean, we're not going to get too deep into commenting on different Disney things. I will say that, Red Zone from last year. So they were having that little experiment with like, hey, it's not going to be, 7 hours of commercial-free football. It's going to be 7 hours of nonstop football. And you know why they did that? They did that to
yeah.
try to stick commercials in there. So
Now
I
there's gonna be a
am,
lot more commercials.
well, that's sort of what we're fearing. However, it seems like Chris Hansen, the pushback that they received, he realized, no, we can't do this, and then they're not gonna allow it to happen. I have less faith that they're gonna be able to push back now with Disney at the helm. So remains to be seen. But I think I might have to. I can't believe it now. Now, if that's the case, I'll have to see how much it is. But Red Zone used to be like the best way to be watching football, and now
Yeah,
maybe
supposedly there may be new host of Red Zone. I'm not going to drop some names right now because
let's not.
I've heard
Let's
some speculation, which would be pretty funny if these guys are actually they're host and co-host kind of thing.
Let's
But
not, because if we're going to criticize who they might replace Chris Hansen with from a
Chris
Demo,
Hansen is the god of fantasy football.
I know, and we could talk off air about why they would replace and who they would replace with. We'll leave it there because we,
Yeah.
we don't want to get into that on
Um, but
anyway.
but
But
going
yes, let's
into
let's
going
talk to the
into some
news.
of
Yeah.
the other news, I had a information spree just spreading to Billy for the past 8 hours.
All right.
And a couple pieces of information that we obviously were talking about Travis Hunter a lot this offseason. And he now is listed as a starting wide receiver and a second string cornerback. So I understand, it's training camp and all these things, but they're going to utilize him to his greatest talent, and that is wide receiver.
So
So,
I think I actually personally, and we'll get into this when we talk about our final rankings a couple weeks from now, but I think I might end up compromising with you. I don't think I think we're being or you're being really a little bit too bullish with him, with how you see him finishing. However, I do think maybe I need to reevaluate Brian Thomas just a little bit.
I
So I
think
might
I
end
think
up,
we all need to because he's technically listed, and a lot of people are actually ranking him as the number 4 wide receiver on their boards, which is insane.
I think that's a little bit much.
Yeah.
And I even think where I've currently have him, I might have to take a look at him. So I'll compromise with you there. It's just like, it's a bit much to just be throwing all these things behind him now, I think. But
Yeah. Yeah.
the way things are trending, yes. Yeah.
The other actually, everything else was kind of like,
Yeah, a
speculation
lot
and
of
stuff like
puff
that. But
pieces and
but
stuff.
this other really big news actually is Isaac Orindo is he's gonna be expecting to miss some time.
That's right.
He is literally the back for the most hurt running back in the league. So, you got to really beat up 49er backfield right now. Now again, Chris McCaffrey, everybody's saying Chris McCaffrey is great. He's better, he looks better than he ever did before. We're all on the Chris McCaffrey train right now. Well, most of us. But the ones that, everybody that's on us, on the Christian McCaffrey train is, playing the hype, understanding that, he is practicing and it looks like he's moving in the right direction. There are no questionable tags, there are no holdbacks with plays. And not only that, but like, when you watch him practice, he looks like the old Chris McCaffrey. He did have really a full year off to rehab this injury. So, to give somebody a full year off and to be able to rehab and focus on football, yeah, I mean, Christian McCaffrey is not one of those guys that goes out there and just does crazy things left and right. He's football. He plays football. He wants to play football, and he wants to brand his name, continue to brand his name. So, I really think that Christian McCaffrey's good. This is going to be a really big hurt for Christian McCaffrey owners having to draft a hurt player that potentially could miss a couple weeks and miss a couple weeks in the regular season, um, to draft somebody. But again, who else is behind him? So you're going to have to draft Isaac Garindo in the ninth, 10th round, if not sometimes earlier, to lock your backfield. So
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that. One of the criticisms that we have of drafting a handcuff running back or picking up a running back and having him the whole year is that really often in a lot of cases you don't know exactly who the handcuff running back is going to
yeah,
be, and or if the back goes down, now you're in a running back by committee situation, or it's not going to be as valuable, yada yada. One of the exceptions to that was Garendo, and we're like, listen, for a guy who's going to be injury prone in McCaffrey, no matter how awesome we think he's going to be, we know that Garendo's the guy. He's the only guy left, and he was good when given the opportunity. Finally, last year, we knew he was the guy. He was one of the only guys that we were like saying, "You need to draft this guy," etc. With this information, it's like an extra punch in the stomach. Like, okay, maybe should we bother doing it? Is it necessarily worth it? Now, are they going to running back by committee it? I don't think so. I think Garendo is enough of a thing. I agree with your assessment of it. I think you're just going to have to take that lump. I don't know if that means that I'll be so crazy about drafting him. Maybe I could just pick him up later, but it's definitely worth noting.
yeah.
That
The
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. There's two other things that are actually pieces of information that came out yesterday. Jordan Addison has been suspended for
Right.
those three first games. So you know what you're getting now with Jordan Addison, which is great. Honestly, it's not great for him, but it's great for your fantasy draft. People that have been drafting already, you should hold off a little bit because these things start compiling and like in the preseason during training camp, contract extensions happen. Like for instance, Kyron Williams gets his contract extension, which we were discussing a couple weeks ago when I said they're going to pay him in training camp. The Rams pay players in training camp. He got paid in training camp. So and he got an extension. Now he bumps up my board a little bit more as well too. So, but the same thing in reverse, when you start seeing suspensions happening, this is where you can actually work on your ADP, work on your rankings. Obviously, Jordan Addison is going to be a great talent for the season, but for those 3 games, you're not going to have him at all. So you can't really draft him in the sixth, seventh round right now. He's going to have to be pushed back because those sixth, seventh rounds sometimes, I mean, you can draft him there, but you're going to lose
I
some value.
I think he might be just completely off my board. We'll see how far. I mean, we'll see how far that goes. But to your point, and again, we'll talk about this a little bit, however many weeks from now. But um, from a season perspective, yeah, guys like a guy like T.J. Hawkinson, his value is significantly increased for the
Yeah.
beginning part of the year. And we feel pretty good about him for most of the year anyway. But it's just an extra feather in the cap. We had the Rashi Rice suspension news came down, right?
hmm
Yeah.
Uh, that wasn't fully locked in, no?
Has it not been official yet? Okay, so we'll vet that. We'll double check that
That's a little bit
situation.
more that one's a little bit more extensive than what's going on with Addison.
Yeah, I basically I wanted to just draw the correlation to, you know, there's a bunch of people of the opinion that, and we're going to get into a bit of this today, that like it doesn't matter if guys miss games. It's worth it having them on the roster because of who they are, and then they could just throw them right in. There's so many fallacies to that argument, which we'll get into today, of like you might not be getting what you're getting. There's going to be issues with that. You're wasting a roster spot. Know with what you know. Like
Yeah.
the devil that you know is so much better than the devil that you don't know, and we'll get into that today. Um, yeah, you had another thing?
Yeah, one more thing. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know if this and I kind of like this. I'm feeling intrigued about this guy signing with the Chargers. Keenan Allen re-signs for a 1-year deal for his last contract, potentially sign, play 1 year, retire. This ain't
Yes.
no this isn't no Mike Williams sign and retire. This is Keenan Allen's playing. He played last year. He was really good last year at certain points, and he
Yes.
has a connection with Justin Herbert.
Yes. I do see a negative to this. I think this takes a little away from Lad McConkey. I do.
I think it does too.
Yeah.
But I think
So
I think if it's going to take away from anybody drastically, it's going to take away from, Harris.
I don't know about that. I mean, if anything,
No, I mean there's a connection already between, obviously Keenan Allen and Ladd with Herbert. You throw in a rookie with that, throw a rookie in the mix, and then the rookie's number 3.
yeah, well, yeah, but it's not like we were seeing Trey Harris as like a significant, uh,
No, but I
you know.
see I see this being kind of like the same situation that happened last year in Chicago, but probably a better situation because Justin Herbert is a better quarterback than Williams.
Sure.
Um, so I mean, Ladd and also Keenan Allen can get anywhere from 7 to 10 targets a game very easily,
Yeah.
and they could do stuff with their targets. So I think they're both value projected players to target on your roster. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit away from Ladd, but again, if there's gonna be that point in time where they're only throwing 30 times a game because they're gonna run the ball, those targets are still there.
Well, when you say target them for your team, like it depends on where they're going from an ADP perspective and how we're comparing them against. So if Lad is going as high as he's currently going, and we have this news and his ADP were to hold still, then unfortunately he might not be in a lot of my teams then,
Yeah.
because again, like so. Keenan Allen could be a
Oh,
late
Keenan
late round
Allen's
shot
ADP is
depending on where he's going.
186 right now.
Well, we'll see how long that stands after this news. I did want to mention one thing. So I wanted to talk about the Houston running back situation.
Yeah.
So
Kind of wanted to
obviously,
talk about that too, but I wanted you to bring it up, not me.
yeah. Well, of course I was going to bring it up because so obviously Joe Mixon is suffering from an injury situation, and we should point out that you and I are both not as high on Joe Mixon for the season as basically as consensus.
No.
And we were feeling, you definitely kind of dragged me into it. You felt it, but I was feeling better about the Nick Chubb situation because he was the kind of the last guy standing.
Yep.
However, it's not been a good. Now, I
Do
always,
not say it has not been a good camp because it's been a good camp with him.
what I want to say is like I only put so much stock into what reporters say and what camp is saying, but it makes sense when I hear things out of reporters' mouths that he doesn't look like he used to, and he's slower, and he's this thing. That to me makes sense because it's after everything that he's been through, after years of attrition on top of his age, et cetera, et cetera. It just makes sense. So it gives lends a little bit more credence into maybe the Houston running game is not going to be as good as it was last
Yeah.
year. They're going to have to go back to the Stroud situation, which they can. On top of the fact of maybe this, it's just like beyond Mixon, who's going to be injury prone. To me, the rest is going to be running back by committee. They have that one rookie running back in there. Throw Chubb in for this and that. It's just not going to be as valuable. You
So
disagree with that?
yeah, no. So I don't think it's gonna be flashy running back one situation. He's gonna have touchdowns. He's not, but he's not gonna break his long runs. He's gonna have. I think he's gonna average probably 2.8 yards per carry potentially. That offensive line is not the greatest either. He was
No.
he was very rewarded with a really good offensive line on the Browns his entire career. You know, the Browns always been a really bad team, but always had a great offensive line, which is insane because their quarterback situation's always been really bad.
The
But
Texans are among the worst offensive lines this year. We'll talk
yeah,
about that in the offseason. So it's just,
but
yeah, go ahead.
let me ask you this. You know, since we're on this kind of subject, like I'm gonna so you got based on ADP within basically a 10 ADP range, right? We're talking about from 40 to technically Nick Chubb is 53, so we'll say 13 spots. Nick Chubb right now is ranked at 53 ADP running back, basically taken off the board. That's very high. That's in Jalen Wright, Jaden Blue, Rashawn Johnson, you know, names that we're probably not really drafting unless you draft basically the starter of that roster, of that team. So, but you're talking about a potential week one starter, Nick Chubb, right? Would you, based on that kind of value, draft Nick Chubb over J.K. Dobbins?
No.
Okay.
Uh,
Would you draft Nick Chubb over Rashad White?
Rashad White. Um, Based on that information, in a glass in a vacuum where I can't see anything, maybe. But
I
it's
would
just,
all day. I would
but
all day draft Nick Chubb over
it
him.
depend. I can just say it really like depends on what I need. Like
Yeah.
if I just want to go for some volume and I really only care about week one or week two or something, maybe.
So this
Uh,
is kind of like the same scenario right here that I feel, you know, so Jerome Ford is on a really, really bad offense, right? He's
yes.
going to be on a really bad
To me,
offense,
I
but
see this as so
now
different. But go ahead.
six quarterbacks, well, five active quarterbacks, but six quarterbacks in that
That's
room. Six
yeah.
now, okay? Six. And Jerome Ford obviously is going to probably be starting the first 3, 4 weeks because we don't know what's happening with Judkins yet.
Right.
So, so basically, in that sense, you know, say if you're tossed between, and let's just say this is a standard league, you're not getting the receptions from Jerome Ford. Do you take Nick Chubb or do you take Jerome Ford?
Jerome Ford, and to me, it wasn't close. I mean,
I
we've
agree.
talked.
I just wanted to put that out there, see if there's any type of controversy, see if anybody's be like, "Oh, what is he going to say?" But yeah, I agree.
No, but and also we talked about this. First of all, one thing that we agreed on is we thought the community in general was getting a little too rah-rah about rookie running backs. A lot of these guys, almost all of them, especially now at this point, like a lot. Notwithstanding, we'll see with the Los Angeles Chargers situation, but these rookie running backs are not just coming in and taking all the volume. That's not how this works. First of all, they're coming in as the backup. The guy that's the incumbent is going to be the guy. He's going to get a lot of work. On top of
Yep.
the fact of they're going to keep it relevant throughout most of the year. Now let's talk about Jerome Ford specifically. Jerome Ford was not bad last year. He was good. He's a good back. I mean, he's not the most explosive, but he's a good
Very
back.
valuable.
He's in his prime in terms of his like age and his skill set.
And his
He's a
last name is Ford. He's American made.
yeah, and he's going to get a lot of volume on a team that is probably not going to be the best. He was the best running back option, short area stuff on top of the runs that they will have. I mean, it just to us it felt like it felt like a good value compared to where it was going to, if nothing else, tons and tons and tons of volume, especially if you're going to be going for later round running backs. You could, like, he's going to be a volume king,
Yeah.
especially for the first half of the year. We started to say, like, a lot of these rookie running backs, their value is going to start to increase kind of like the second half of the year. And to me, and every argument that you just made just bolsters this argument. Jerome Ford is not bad. Like, to me, and you just compared him to the Nick Chubb. This is the main difference. Jerome Ford is going to get a lot of volume. He's going to be good, especially for the first half of the year, and he's in the prime and is good. Nick Chubb at this point is not where he was at. He's just not, and we don't even know what kind of volume he's going to have. He's not just going to
Well,
be the guy.
I
Ford,
think I
Ford, we
I
think is going to be the
I
guy.
am optimistic with him. I'm the in the let's see category, and I'm not afraid to take him in the 11th round where he's basically being projected in a 12 team league. That is not scary to take somebody in that place right there because you literally are just now drafting on depth or taking your
Well,
starting quarterback.
right, which we'll get into that. She'll get into that today. But yeah, I agree with that. That was actually the main thing why we brought up Chubb in the past and stuff. Like what you were paying for him was literally nothing.
Such a potential value.
Right.
to
But
to to especially if your strategy, because again we'll be talking strategy, and just so everybody knows, we will be doing mock drafts once a week after the show,
we're
basically
gonna
on
see.
a different show, basically going over everything to make sure that you guys see different strategies being drafted. But you know if you are drafting in a sense where you're going heavy wide receiver in the first 4 rounds, and then you're going to start working on your running backs. This is a perfect opportunity to take a Nick Chubb late in the draft, and he could be your RB2 to start the season. You just plug him in.
I got it. But I
But
don't know.
again,
I don't know if
you
I
just might not have
agree.
any other choice
Right. But
because your wide receivers are fantastic in a PPR.
right, but my point is, I think there's way better options than that, and I think we're getting a little bit too ahead of ourselves with just assuming. Without mixing there, to me, it's just going to be an RBBC. It seems like they're not going to bell cow Nick Chubb. I'll say this though, if they do, it'll happen for like week one, maybe week two. That'll be it. Like, so if you could find another solution after the fact. But the main thing I could say to bolster your argument is that you're
Hey,
paying nothing for him.
he
So,
could be a sign and trade.
right, we're spending way too much time on
Nick Chubb.
guys in the 12th and 13th round.
My wife is gonna watch this show and she's gonna be like, I am drafting Nick Chubb now.
Well, it's in the 12th or 13th,
The sixth round, Nick Chubb is
wherever it
gonna
is
go
that
off the
he's
board.
going. Yeah. Any other interesting news you wanted to get to before we jump into this?
No, I think we covered everything that is interesting or semi-interesting.
Okay. All right. So let's jump into draft strategy. We got a lot to get to. We got a lot to get to today. We got some interesting math and some stuff, and we basically organized this into five main. Let's call them tips. Let's call them categories or conversation topics to talk about. So we'll set this up for you guys, and obviously we'll comment and we'll go from there. So the first major thing we want to convey, and there's no other way to say it. We'll just say it like as plainly as it is. Running backs are more valuable early, but wide receivers hold their value better later in the draft. And case in point, let me just make a nice little example for everybody. Last year in half point PPR, the running back 12 was Chase Brown. He finished at 228 points. The wide receiver 12 last year was Lad McConkey. He finished at 199 points. That's 30 points. That's not a small difference. The running back 36 last year was Travis Etienne at 110 points. And I had to look back and laugh at it because I forgot that that's all he got. The
Well,
wide
he was
receiver,
injured. He was
right.
injured.
I know, I forgot. The wide receiver 36 last year was Josh Downs at 147 points. That's almost a 40-point difference at the same exact slot. So this should make sense to everybody. Obviously, it's simple supply and demand. Teams start multiple wide receivers at a time, but only one running back at any given time. I got it, generally speaking. Um, it makes more, and especially with like today's NFL, more wide receivers are more relevant throughout the year, and less running backs, and also just there's less bell cows, there's less running backs who aren't getting spelled by other backs. By this logic, it just makes the guys who are getting all that work even more valuable. But the reason we bring that up is like once you get past whatever that amount of running backs are who are that valuable, the drop off is so significant that it's why you end up taking more shots on wide receiver later because there's more opportunity for them to return value for you later. You take the running backs early. Now we'll get into the exceptions to that if you're going to try a no running back strategy. However, we just wanted to point that math out because you want to maximize that knowing that math to try to capitalize and get more value earlier than later. So in terms of before we get into like wide receiver strategies, any comments you wanted to make on that little tidbit there?
Yeah, no, no. I mean, that makes sense because obviously, I know Travis Etienne was your kind of plug-in right there, but then if you look at the rest like Jaylen Warren, Jerome Ford, they're all around the same category right there. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense because, the drop off is pretty significant with running back. That's why running back has such a great value. Wide receiver is going to, if you miss on wide receiver in the early, you can gain it later in the draft potentially. So there's an opening, but the problem there is running back based on we talk about touches, right? Touches are king, right? Touches, targets, all of that is king. Running backs are getting touches and targets. So there is, they could be basically seeing the ball.
Some running backs,
Yeah, some running backs. But like,
right?
I'm saying, let's just say the overall running back position sees the ball 35% of the time.
Right.
That's a lot. That's a lot on the field. A wide receiver can see the ball maybe 8 to 16% of the time. I take that 35%.
Right. Right. I mean, again, it depends. What this is you're maximizing value. You're looking at supply and demand. You got to remember, you have to start two running backs in most
Yep.
leagues. So if
And
we're all
sometimes depending on leagues, depending on the setting and all that stuff, and say you go out and you draft some pass catching running backs, like there's more value in pass catching running backs than there is in wide receiver.
right, you you
Start them
you
on
got
your flex.
you got to remember, like we already just described to you this effect that like just from a points perspective, the running backs at the top end are just better than the wide receivers on
Yeah.
average. But at the lower end, the wide receivers blow them out of the water. On top of the fact of that you need to start two running backs, like you start to run out of like viable running backs pretty quickly. It's why you try to take your shots early. On top of the fact of, you know, things go bad, like players get injured, players have bad seasons, so you want to try to get more shots on that if you can because you start running out of opportunities for, building that building your roster that way. Case in point, I'm not saying therefore, hey, you just listen to what we said, so now I should just click running back on my first round, click running back on my second round,
No.
click running back. That's not exactly what we're saying. Keep it in mind, it's perfectly viable, but you have to know these trends. So case in point though, it is why some people have a lot of success with the quote unquote no running back or quote unquote hero running back strategy because all you have to do is you just have to fill a roster spot. So if you want to just say, you know what, I'm punting that situation to be like, well, I don't want to just have to pigeonhole my team into just hurrying up and getting these backs because there's so few of them that hold their value. You could let that go, load up, and it means loading up on wide receiver. That way you're taking lots and lots of shots. That way you get the absolute best. You get a great quarterback, you get a great tight end, and then you just kind of fill in the positions with starter X towards later on in the draft. It's perfectly viable,
Mhm.
and the reason that it's viable is because of how small this supply is for the demand of what it is. When was the last time you had a? Did you do any no running back strategies last year? Because last year would have been a bad year for it because all the
No.
running backs held their value at the top of the.
So I'm not really a no running back strategy guy. And I think it's because I've really never tried it. I've seen people do it before and it really messed their roster up because if you go and you take the wrong wide receivers, and you're taking the wrong running backs, um, injuries do happen, but like there's if you're just drafting on ADP and that's basically how you do that's how you do basically your draft by, wide receiver heavy, you could really see a big issue and find yourself at the bottom of the pack. So
Yeah.
you also have to know when to turn off the switch with the wide receivers. Because if you're going to go five in a row, you're really screwed.
No, you're right. And also like and we'll get into this a little bit later in this
With any
conversation.
strategy, there has to be balance. And if there's not balance, then you're really digging a hole.
Yeah. Uh, and again, I was just mentioning we'll get into this when we talk about this a little bit later, but there is a reason why we do tier-based drafting, and we'll kind of mention the logic on that a little bit later on. You want to maximize that to maximize value, and this is the top reason why. So keep this dynamic in mind, and really try to hit those top running backs if you can. Otherwise, maybe try to look at whatever other strategy. Um, so let's go into big tip point conversation topic number two. One that we all kind of know, anybody who's really in the community, and it's weight on the onesie positions. So,
Yep.
uh, and I don't think people fully get the math of it. So I just want to illustrate it here. It's simple supply and demand. You need more shots for when you have more shot at starting positions. Generally speaking, you start one quarterback and one tight end, and you start two running backs and two wide receivers. Now, generally, you're actually starting more than that for wide receiver. We'll get into that. So I'll just illustrate this by giving you some stats here. Between weeks 1 and 17, that's the fantasy season from last year, 42 quarterbacks had at least one top 12 finish. 57 tight ends had at least one top 12 finish. 75 running backs had at least one top 24 finish, and 113 wide receivers had at least one top 24 finish. So now let me give you what that means in terms of a ratio. So if you take the ratio, this is the number of that position that had a relevant finish, divided by the number of starting positions in your league, you get a ratio. It gives you a positional value per player. At quarterback, that's 3.5. That means there's 3.5 quarterbacks for every starting position that are viable. Tight end is 4.8. So remember, the higher the number, it means the quote unquote less valuable the pick is.
Yeah.
Running back, it's a whole half below at 3.1. Remember now, that's 75 running backs for 36 starting positions. Now, here's the kicker. At wide receiver, okay, the value there is at 113 wide receivers for only 24 for 24 starting positions. The ratio there is 4.7. However, we just explained this. Generally speaking, you're starting a wide receiver in your flex. Why? Because of all the reasons that we just laid out. On top of the fact that a lot of leagues now are just moving to three wide receivers, double
Unless
flexes, etc.
unless you have a pass catching running back that's going to start in your flex.
Okay, we're gonna leave that because we have to make this point. If you take that 113 and you divide it by the 36, you get the exact same ratio as the running backs, 3.1, almost a half a position better than the quarterbacks, and
Yeah.
almost a full and a half position better than the tight ends. This trend, if you go back and you look a number of years, is exactly the same. You wait on those onesie positions because you just need more shots at it. Why? Qualitatively, why is this happening? Quarterbacks, how are you ending up with this many in just the starting positions? Because it's predictability. They're matchups. They're easy to see. Mac Jones had a top 12 week last year. Drake May, like you can find out guys going against a bad defense. They got to have to throw a lot. It's going to be in a dome or whatever else. Jared Goff is hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. Some stuff like that. Like you can identify this stuff. Tight ends, this is even more fun. We have fun with tight ends every single week. You're always checking out trending volume, which teams are looking bad against tight ends. By the way, most teams are just playing the lotto anyway with tight end. After the top
And
three,
and
like
I got a feeling this year when we talk waivers, we're going to be talking a lot of tight ends this year. Tight
we're going
ends
to
are
be
probably going to be the 50% of the conversation, I think.
they might just be. But the point is, you got to remember in a 12-team league, really, there's only like three teams that are having a quote unquote positional advantage over you. Everybody
Yeah.
else is just playing the lotto. Even if you've got like, Hawkinson, like, okay, did he get a touchdown? Like it's a lot of these guys, like what that means. Very few guys are in this just, superstar tier. Really only three or so. You talk about that's why you end up having it's just easier to find these onesie positions. Let's just bolster the point with running backs. You got to remember all the 32 starting running backs in the NFL, they're all going to be rostered. And a lot of the backups, a lot of the handcuffs. Good luck trying to find quality running backs after the fact. It usually only happens like after an injury or something. And we should point out with wide receivers that this is a trend that Tom and I have been noticing for a long time. And it's good and bad at the same time. But generally speaking, the community is better at identifying wide receivers with upside or wide receivers with consistent flex appeal. So you can always you can find some wide receivers to plug and play, but you're kind of like, hey, let's take your shot. Who's going to get a touchdown? Is
Yeah.
Nick Westbrook-Akine going to keep touchdown going? Stuff like that. The point is, though, you have to take more shots to get more and better opportunities to get those total points. And like we said, like you're going to be getting running backs early, more shots on wide receiver later. You don't need to be mucking that up by just taking your Josh Allen early or something. Like you don't need to. So I know you agree wholeheartedly with this situation. So
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, and unfortunately, there are people that like that shiny subject. I mean, I will tell you though, like, and again, it depends also on the draft that you're in. Some people, if, especially when you're drafting online, and you're not live or anything like that, quarterbacks could, obviously wait sometimes to the fourth, fifth round. We've seen that. Like, you could get Josh Allen the fourth, fifth round. If you could get him there, then fantastic. You already got your baseline, of your players. Now, but the rest of the league also got their baseline of players as well too. But again, I would still wait because if you're waiting that long, then those other players, there's still going to be a wide variety of quarterbacks, late in the draft.
yeah, and again, we'll get into this at the very end when we talk about the actual tier-based drafting. Check those out. I mean,
Yeah.
see where those things lie. You can wait and get guys that you're actually really interested in. It doesn't mean never draft. It
Yeah,
just
no.
means like not
Hold.
not not to the detriment of the running backs or wide receivers where you need to take multiple shots. And we should point out, you know, if injuries happen all the time, but if you're taking multiple shots at wide receiver and running back, you're kind of covering yourself. You're
Yep.
covering yourself from injury. If you invest at a quarterback or tight end and there's an injury there, not only have you messed yourself up at that position, you've messed yourself up at the other positions in terms of your investment that you've had there. So just keep it in mind. Yeah, and I agree with what you just said. There's a point at which if guys dropped, I would take them. Probably fourth round is probably right about right for me.
Yeah,
For
I mean, if you put it in
yeah.
perspective, just like playing roulette, right? If you're going to cover if you're going to try to cover two-thirds of the field, right? You're going to basically, go one 12, second 12, and then you're going to leave third 12 out, right? You're going to cover two-thirds of the field. You got to do it the same way with your drafts.
Right. Because that's how it works. Yeah.
That's how it works.
All right. So we can all agree there. So let's move on to the third one here. And this one's such a pet peeve for me. I hate this one. So
Yeah.
beware of point projections. Okay. Uh,
Oof.
and
The
this
point
apply.
projections have
Oh,
already came out, so
oh,
don't base your draft. Do not base your draft on, oh, my team will score 200 points if I
I
draft
know.
these players.
And and not only, I mean, you could look at it, but like you cannot just to the exclusion of anything else. And this applies in the draft and in the regular season.
Yeah, it does.
So let me just give you this example. I found this hilarious. So the current ESPN wide receiver is Terry McLaurin with a projection of 208 points. The current ESPN wide receiver is DJ Moore with 198 points. Okay. That is a 10-point swing for 9 spots at that high in the draft.
Yep.
10 points that they can accurately project from guys. That's one touchdown and a catch, basically. Like
And the other
nine
thing is,
points.
and we take these two players in perspective. McLaurin potentially, depending on the situation, he might find his way to another team. So how
Right.
is he going to score 208 points?
Right. How are they possibly projecting it this way? Now I got it. This is part of the job. I'm not going to
Yeah, no,
criticize
I get
them,
it.
but I just like
I think he's going to also stay in Washington, but it's, I don't know. You added more talent there.
I bring
You know.
this up. I bring this up because there's so often, again, it happens in the draft and it happens in the regular season that a lot of people will be making start sit decisions. They'll be like, "Ah, I need to, plug in a wide receiver here. I need to plug in a tight end," and they'll be looking like they have guys on their roster, and they'll be like, well, this guy's ranked number 19, and then this guy's ranked number 38. Well, I'll go for the guy ranked. But maybe the reason that they're ranked 19 is because their projected points was like 8 points higher than the guy 20 spots below.
Yeah.
They can't they can't accurately project things like that. You can think if guys are going to do well, if they're not going to do well. It's why I'm a math guy, but honestly, you do need to look at qualitative evaluations of players if you're going to start them, why you're going to start them, be able to accurate or why you're going to draft them, and be able to accurately like list out those reasons beyond, well, he's projected for a touchdown and 3 catches or something. Like that's not the way. That's not the way to play this.
No.
Yeah. On top of the fact that these are just guesses, people should understand that the project, if those
Well,
are
you got to,
guesses,
you know, I mean, you got to also put in perspective, like, you got to give ESPN their credit as well too. They do their math to get these, these authentications to put this out there because their stamps on this as well too. But there are obviously, again, AI takes in play based on algorithms and all that stuff. We don't live in the world of AI when we play football, right? So we have to look at, stats. We have to look at plays. Like that's why we watch Red Zone. That's why we watch replays of games. That's why we see what's happening on the field because stats are one thing, but when we're watching the football plays happen, some stats don't some of these plays don't equivalate to stats, right? You could see what's happening on the other side when a player basically comes down the field, takes, blocks for the running back, and then, whatever the situation is, or the route running and stuff like that in practice. You really can't equivalate that to stats right now. But when they start catching the ball, that's when you equivalate to stats. The thing is, you have to really watch the player, the chemistry, everything, because it may not happen week one, week two, week three, but that player, that's ranked 24th can surpass number 15th by week 4 or 5 and for the rest of the season.
right? Or even at that point, like
Yep.
it's like it's just it's not something that should be taken as gospel.
No,
That's
no,
that's what that's
of
what we're
course.
saying. All right, so let's move to number four. This one I know Tommy and I are in full agreement here on this one, and I know, we live this. So don't buy the injury, and we're gonna add don't buy the injury slash contract dip that can happen.
Unless it's a hamstring.
Oh no, that don't buy it. Definitely don't buy it. Don't don't listen to the sarcasm. So we know what happens here. Every year, players fall in the draft because of injury, and in this case, more and more recently, contract concerns in camp. They're not playing for whatever reason. So often, a lot of people in the draft they want to capitalize on this because people are dropping down the draft, and then they want to draft them because to them they see as a value. They're drafting at quote unquote as a value because they dropped in the draft. And to them, they see them as the original value that they were. And they so aren't. In nearly every case, this ends up costing them. Players who don't practice tend to not be ready. They tend to drag their injury into the season or get re injured in the season because they weren't practicing. This is true for holdouts as well. We say this all the time. Having played, and I played in college, players need practice. You need
Yeah.
to get yourself up to speed.
Need to get hit.
Yeah. We have a rule that we've kind of been evolving over the time. So our rule at this point basically is they need to get in multiple practices in a row before we're willing to draft him. At least, I mean, there's a point at which they drop
Yeah.
significantly, but for us to draft him within X amount, like it's going to be, they need to get in multiple practices in a row. And we should point out that during the season, we kind of operate the same way. Like you need to get in at least one practice during the season, like
Yeah,
in the dog
and I
days.
will say, and again, we're not talking about like the board across the board. We're talking about these star players, these top tier players that were projected, like Terry McLaurin.
Right. He's a good
Some
example.
some of these higher tier players that were really focused on putting a big number on for draft purposes, not your 11th, 12th round player, right? Because those are the ones you're trying to shoot for the stars. Now, if this continues and like say like Terry McLaurin is pushing and he's not getting a contract, he's not practicing, and he's falling in drafts, well, you have an opportunity to take him in the sixth round because you know he's going to play.
Right.
He ain't no Le'Veon Bell, right? He's not pulling no Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell also that year was a number one overall pick.
Yeah,
So,
I was there.
or around a number one overall pick, whatever it was. But the thing is, we're talking about these early picks that you're investing a very, very heavy pick on. Beware, buyer beware with those. You have to really know the players and you have to really watch what they're doing on the field and the practice field to make sure that you're comfortable because you don't want them to come out week one and tweak their hamstring again if they're not
Right.
practicing full speed because that's gonna be a whole season situation.
Yeah, we should point out. So we're recording this on Wednesday, August 6th. So as of right now, there's a lot of players who are currently at a camp, not just for hamstrings, but for other reasons, contracts, other issues. And my level of concern at the exact moment is a little bit low, depending on who we're talking about. But if we come back in another couple weeks and these guys are still not practicing, let's just throw out names. McLaurin, for example. AJ Brown is currently out with a hamstring. The Najee Harris eyeball situation. I mean, then it's going to affect how
Khalil
we see this.
Shakir.
Khalil
That's a
Shakir,
mid-round guy right there, but that's your wide receiver
right?
one for the Bills, technically.
Basically, yeah. So we're going to keep an eye on that. But if they're not practicing, then we're just going to have to lower our expectations for these guys. It's just simple. It is what it is. You
Yep.
you, you live and you learn, and you do that. All right, so let's get into our last little item here, and this is the main little bit of the main course. So tier-based drafting. This is in response to anybody who looks at just a list of rankings or a top 200 or something like that, and then just picks guys in order, whoever's the top. That is not how you maximize value. So you need to understand that everything in the draft is opportunity cost. What are you giving up elsewhere to draft the player that you are? If you take a top tier running back, you're not getting a top tier wide receiver in the first
Mhm.
round, or vice versa. Maximizing your draft is this is mathematically, this is what it is. Maximizing your draft is minimizing your opportunity cost. That's why you draft in tiers. So we got a nice little example for you guys here. So we used the McLaurin and DJ Moore example. So the current ESPN wide receiver 15 is McLaurin with 208. Like we said, the current ESPN wide receiver 24 is DJ Moore with 198 points. Let's say we take the ESPN rankings and projections as gospel, which we don't, but just for the sake of this argument, let's say we take them as gospel. Those are 10 wide receivers in that span, wide receiver 15 to 24. Let's say that they're all in the same tier, because again, those are only separated by 10 points. They're all comparable with similar end of year projections. So let's say that we are somewhere in the fourth round and 9 of these guys are left. Let's also say that we have an eye on 1 or 2 running backs that we really like, and we'd love to grab one of them. After those 2 running backs, there's a drop off in value, so we really want to try to get one of 2 running backs. We know we want to get one of each of those positions, so let's compare 2 different likely outcomes. Scenario A, we draft the best, quote unquote, among the available 9 wide receivers because we want him. He's the highest ranked on the list. And then when that draft snakes back around to us, both of those running backs are now gone because there was only 2 running backs and now they're gone. So now we
Yep.
just have to now we just have to go down a lower tier. Scenario B, we draft one of those 2 running backs now. And then when the draft snake backs to us, one of those wide receivers from that original tier of 10, they make it around back to us. So we'll take that. So consider what happened there. In scenario A, we grabbed a higher tier wide receiver and a lower tier running back. But in scenario B, we grabbed a higher tier wide receiver and a higher tier running back. We minimized our opportunity cost. We got both of the guys within the tiers from a mathematical perspective that we want. It's 10 times better to do it that way. You need to consider how many guys are left within a tier and a position group that you are looking at to make these decisions. Each decision is a mini supply and demand situation. I know that we've been getting better and better at this. That's why we do our projection, our tiers and rankings that we present out to everybody. We do it based on tiers. You need to consider this every time. I know I've been doing this for a very, very long time. I mean, could it be any clearer for people?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So it's there's a million different ways that we could describe this to people, but we kind of just want to hammer that point home. And so we were kind of referencing the tier-based drafting through everything else we were mentioning earlier in our little conversations here. If you can do that well and you're looking at your sheets or whatever. So for example, like we were just saying, with the weighting on the onesie positions, uh, let's say you have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, give or take, they're the top tier quarterbacks. Okay, you know that they're tier one, and then you have, I'll just off the top of my head, let's say Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts are the tier two quarterbacks. Okay, whatever, just off the top of my head. Um, and let's say whatever round it is, and they're all three of those quarterbacks are left: Burrow, Hurts, and Daniels. And whatever round it is, you're coming around and you're thinking, well, I've already got a bunch of running backs and wide receivers. I'm in like the fourth or the fifth or something. These guys are still there. Maybe I could get another. Should I just jump to get Burrow now? Well, maybe if you wait, depending on you snaking around, if you wanted to get a higher tier quarterback, maybe you could wait and then, okay, Burrow's gone, Daniels is gone, but I could get Hurts on the way back. Like
Mhm.
that's a functional example of when it's worth it or whatever.
Yeah,
So just
no. Yeah, of course. I mean, you just gotta, again, it's just that's draft based, but based on scenarios of how drafts are going, for sure. And I really think, if you really focus on your tiers as we, obviously, and you get and our community can just continue to follow our tier updates and stuff like that as we get closer and closer and closer to the drafts.
we're gonna have a big
But
episode on that. Yeah.
yeah, we'll have another big episode on tier updates, ranking updates, everything. Um, but if you draft on tier, because every software is different, right? Even if it's, whatever it is when it comes down to projections and all those things, like every software is different, but your own math and your own knowledge is yours. So utilize what you know as a football fanatic watching football and all that stuff, and focusing on the games, watching Red Zone. You know who you want to draft. Doesn't matter sometimes on ADP if you got to pull them a round early, because you feel, if you feel something about a player, you got to go out there and get them. And that's where tier drafting is going to be a little bit more intense than ADP drafting.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Um, and again, like sometimes things happen in the draft that
Now, I'm not
or
telling you to go draft Kyron Williams with the number one overall pick. Do not do that.
no, but just it's important to keep in mind. And again, I know a lot of people when you start talking about math, especially in a game where it's like it's a fun thing and you're just like you're getting excited to play a thing and you want to kind of escape your life. I know it's an eye roll for a lot of people, but if you're trying to win, there is a mathematical aspect to it, and it is what it is. Now, again, that's coming after the last segment where I just said, don't overly do the math. You have to consider qualitative things as well, but the point is it's both. You have to consider both
Yeah.
if you're trying to get the most there.
And let's put it this way, guys, everybody. Pretty much the majority is 12 team leagues, right?
Yes.
I would assume. Some people are in 10 team. Let's just say the majority is 12 team leagues. Everybody has at the draft, before that draft starts, everybody has an 8% chance of winning your league, right?
Oh
It all
boy.
starts with the draft. It all starts with the draft. There's going to be teams that have a 4% chance, and then you have a 12% chance. It's going to adapt and change, but this is the most important factor, right? Like we're talking about draft season right now. You got to keep focused. You got to, and we're not talking about 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're talking about just watching your games. This is what you guys do. This is what you enjoy to do. We've been waiting since the Super Bowl to watch
Yes.
football, and football is back. And enjoy it, embrace it. If you start 0 and 5 in the season, well, we're gonna have strategies through the season that help you overcome that 0 and 5 start. Because I know some of us have started 0 and 5 based on certain circumstances, but we revived our season and we found our way to the playoffs. Right. The most important thing is cashing in on your buy-ins. Right. That's the most important thing.
It's
Positive income.
it's a it's an investment is what we're
Yeah.
saying. So So there we go. That's our little draft strategy for everybody. Next week we're going to be covering a little bit more qualitative stuff. So today we covered a lot of mathematical stuff, supply and demand, etc. Next week we're going to be doing a lot of qualitative stuff. Well, so we'll get you guys ready for that. And then the week after that, we got our final ranking show. We got our
Yep.
final ranking show, an injury roundup. We'll get on that. And then we're basically like jumping really like into the season here. So we're getting real close. I'm super excited. And I couldn't be more excited to share all this with you guys. So final thoughts, Mr. Lang?
Yeah, again, we appreciate everybody that took the time today to or tomorrow or whatever the day is that you're going to take the time and watch this video. You got some time to really focus in, but again, we appreciate everybody that takes the time to watch our videos. If you could please share, subscribe, ring that bell. You'll get notified when a new video gets dropped. Again, we will be dropping a mock draft this week, so be on the lookout. Another mock draft. Every single week we'll be dropping a mock draft until the season starts. So we need to really, really focus on those ADPs. So you guys will see different draft strategies that we're going to be putting in so we can see how we can develop our team. Sometimes our team might not look too pretty in the beginning, but it's not where you start, it's where you finish.
There it is. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.